I get knocked down, but I get up again. You ain't never gonna keep me down. I get knocked up. Oh, knocked, not knocked up. Knocked up means pregnant, so I definitely didn't get knocked up. I was just singing. It's a song by Chumbawamba. I can't remember the name. I just know it's. I get knocked down, but I get up again. You ain't never gonna bring me down. I get knocked down. Anyway, uh, hello, hi, welcome. The name of the show is Politics. Although I call it Politrix, and my name is Presh. Uh, the title of this episode is undecided at this moment, but I'm thinking about something to do with Han Solo. Like just calling the episode Han Solo, perhaps Solo, a Star Wars story. Um, there's a book by. Fuck, I can't remember his name now. The guy who wrote Matilda and the BFG. Fuck, I can't remember his name right now, but Roald Dahl, right? I was a big fan of Roald Dahl when I was younger. I have like a collection of his books, and he has two autobiographies. One is Boy, telling about his his life when he was a boy, and the other one is, I think it's like riding solo or going solo or something like that, which is when he was in the army, fighting during World War II. But I haven't read those in a very long time, so don't quote me on that. Anyway, uh, so the reason for that title is, unfortunately, I'm alone this week. My co-host's auntie passed away, and he's gone to Durban for the funeral. Um, my interactions with his auntie, were very limited, but she always seemed like a very nice, sweet lady. So, R.I.P. to her. Uh, and you may be thinking like, oh well, isn't this what's the word? Like a big coincidence? Last week, Presh, you were making a big joke about death, and now during the week, somebody died. Isn't that you know? There's this video of Chadwick Boseman, like just after the press tour for the first Black Panther, and he was really tired of, being made to do the pose and having to answer questions. And so somebody asked him, he's like, uh, when is the sequel, or what are you going to do in the sequel? And he said, I'm not going to be in the sequel, or something like that. And when he died, this girl that I knew from high school posted a thing that's like, the power of the tongue, as if though him saying that caused him to die, or you know, uh, well, some could say I was making a joke, but I wasn't making a joke. Uh, I died last week, and my twin brother, sacrificed himself so that I could live. I don't think that's a joke. I think that's a story of heroism. That's you know. But anyway, I was wondering if I should do a commentary, but I've been thinking about it. We've done too many commentaries in the past couple of weeks, in the main feed. So I don't want to do that again, and I don't want to just do a regular episode because I I find those it's more conversational. I want to say what I think, then I want him to say what respond to that, etc., etc. So I couldn't do a regular episode. So I decided this is going to be a much more informal episode. There's no overall topic. These are just like random thoughts I've been having, which is why I'm titling the episode something solo, because there's no, like, I'd usually title it the name of the movie that we're covering, but there is no movie this week. So yeah. Uh, okay. So I didn't really write anything out because, like I said, it's informal. But I did like write some headings. Uh, the first thing I want to talk about, or the first person I want to talk about, is Vivek. Thinking to yourself, who is Vivek? Well, he's an Indian guy who is running for the Republican nomination for president. And he's definitely not going to win. As I've been, saying in the past couple of weeks that, Ron DeSantis, Chris Christie, Mike Pence, all these idiots, they're not going to win, right? Trump is, if not 100%, extremely, extremely likely to win the nomination. But these guys are, they're not campaigning to become president. They're campaigning to get noticed by Donald Trump so he can pick them as his vice president, right? And I think that's especially the angle Vivek is going for. It's very similar to Pete Buttigieg, right? If you don't follow American politics, this may just seem like gibberish to you, but there was a guy, his name is Pete, and just the way that the primaries work in America, it's very, very deranged, right? So instead of having just one day where everybody goes to vote, they have, it's like a staggered kind of thing. So they have an event in Iowa, and then the winners, like the winner of Iowa is decided there. Then they go to Nevada, and the winner is decided there, and they go like state by state until like later on they do like three states by three states. And it's very bad because, like, say you have a candidate that you like, but they didn't get a lot of votes in Iowa and Nevada and they drop out. So now when it comes to your chance to vote, you can't vote for the person that you wanted because, you know, they didn't get enough momentum to stay in the race. So the early primaries carry a lot more weight than the later ones. So what Pete Buttigieg did in the 2020 election is he went very hard in the first couple of, you know, events so that his name could be in the picture, and then later on he leveraged that to become the transportation secretary under Joe Biden. So, you know, because this guy was a mayor of a small town, so, you know, he doesn't really have experience of working like at the government level. You know, he's very like small time, and he, you know, so him managing to become the transportation secretary was a big coup, right? And I think Vivek is doing something similar for Trump, or, you know. That being said, he's a Hindu, right? Which the the Christians in America view as like a demonic a demonic religion. Essentially, whatever you see in the movie Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, that's what that's what Christians think Hindus are. So, you know, he has an uphill battle, but he the reason why I want to speak about him is that certain people may find what he's saying to be reasonable when it's definitely not, right? Uh, okay, so the first time I heard about this guy was in South Asian masculinity. It's a subreddit on, well, Reddit, right? And I clicked on that because, you know, I'm of South Asian descent, and of course I'm a very muscular, manly man for men, and so what? So what are you saying? You know, I don't have muscles. So, you know, I'm. So what are you saying? I'm 90% flab and the other 10% fat. Is that what you're saying? All right. Well, fuck you. You know, I'm a muscly man. You don't know. I'm not saying I have the most muscles in the world, but I have a few muscles. You know. But anyway, let's move on from here. Right. Um, that subreddit is 99% posts of like guys saying, you know, they complaining that girls don't like them, or like they approached a girl and she didn't like it, and they're blaming it on the fact that they're South Asian or of South Asian descent. I'm just gonna say Indian, right? That the fact that they're Indian. So I don't want to be there because I'm not trying to be dragged into that like loser mentality. Sorry, gang, but because you know it's pretty sad, right? You can't blame someone for not liking you. You know, if your approach isn't working, you need to improve your skill set. You know, you can't blame like this girl is looking for certain things and you just don't have those certain things. So, you know, you should work on yourself so you do have a clearly defined set of things, you know, that you can sell yourself on. But obviously, I'm not a dating coach. You know, kind of an idiot. But so this guy Vivek, the post I saw was from this guy who was like, "This is gonna be very good for South Asian representation. That he's gonna be like you don't have a lot of Indians, like on the world stage. And him, well, that post thought he was going to become president, which, like I've outlined, very unlikely. Um, but yes, this we've spoken about it many times on the show, but this is called liberal identity politics. So what this means is, if you share an identity or some characteristics with a person, then you support them, which is horribly wrong. If you remember a few, I don't know what episode it is, but there's an episode where I said the MF. The MF is an Indian political party in South Africa. And when I was a child, I told the story that I went with my dad to go vote. Well, I wasn't voting. He was voting. I was just going along, right? And I asked him, who are you voting for? And he said, the MF. And I asked him, why? And he said, because they're Indians, right? Which is, again, liberal identity politics. And my cousin said, or my co host said, uh, there's a certain logic to that. And I just let it go. I don't turn to him and say, no, the fuck, there isn't. You know, just because somebody shares an identity with you, it does not mean they share the same politics, as evidenced by this guy Vivek, right? He's like a regular right winger. He believes in like lower taxes for the rich. We need to stop government spending. Private corporations will take care of it. Just obviously, just poison brain shit, right? But sorry, there's so many things. This is the problem with not writing stuff down. I'm just trying to think about the things I want to say, right? Going back to the idea of Vivek being a positive representation of South Asian masculinity, I don't think so at all, right? This guy is very cringe. So he was doing I don't like a rally where he was rapping Eminem's "Lose Yourself," and again he just looked very cringe. He looked like a loser. He's doing he's actually having the opposite effect to make Indians look bad. So that's the first thing I wanted to say. The second thing is, I read his book. I don't know why I read his book, but I just read it. Right? It's called Woke Inc. Well, he has a few books. The one I read was Woke Inc. I didn't read the rest of his. You know, what's a filmography for books? Is bookography. Yeah. So his whole thing is like, we need to go back to Milton Friedman. The business just does the business operations, right? So businesses realize that. Oh, let me just go back. So he tells the story of when he was at the CEO of a medical corporation. And during this time, it was during 2020 with like the Black Lives Matter movement, right? And a lot of the workers at his company were wondering like, all right, what are you going to do to aid Black Lives Matter? And he said, we're going to do nothing. Right? Because he's like, that's not a function of our business to like help social organizations. We're here to do a function which is like, I can't remember, he did something in medicine, right? And his argument was like, well, if we can get better medicine out there, it will help black people in the long run. But both what this guy and Milton Friedman, to an extent, didn't understand is that people kind of that's a form of advertising, right? So like, if a company donates food and stuff, or like goods to a charity, they can use that as hey, look at us, we're doing good in the community, which people will see that and they'll get good feelings towards their company and think to themselves, oh, I should buy from here because they're doing a lot of good. But it's like somebody stabbed you, right? And you have like a big gaping wound. These companies giving charities like a small gift is like a plaster over that big stabbing, right? If these companies were taxed at a higher rate and the government, used that money to help, charities and homeless people, that would be going to surgery and solving the stab in your body, right? So the point of it being, companies use this token gesture as a way to gain favor in the market. This idiot doesn't realize that what his employees want is like a token gesture. Like, these liberal idiots don't want to solve the problem, right? They don't want to have a reckoning with, do we need the police or not? And this is a worldwide thing. I've spoken about this many times before. Police aren't the way to fight crime, right? A lot of crime happens because people are poor. They, you know, rob people to not be poor. And yeah, that's how crime happens. Well, that's one type of crime, which is robbery. But, if you're robbing somebody and they like fight back, you may kill them, you know. But I'm not trying to defend this. I'm just saying, if they're in that position, if we set up a program that could help people, that could like train them so that they can get a proper job and they can contribute to society, it would help benefit both them and society, as opposed to paying police who go and beat up homeless people because they in the public, and it's a eyesore. So yeah, if liberals really wanted to solve the problem, they would, like I said, reckon with the police. But what these people wanted was a token gesture. Just say, all right, we're donating $10,000 to the Black Lives Matter organization, right? I've heard a lot of stories that not the movement of Black Lives Matter, but the person who set up that organization was a scammer, and they just took that money that people were donating and ran away. But that's neither here or there, right? Yeah, it could be any charity that they donated to. They just wanted a token gesture, and this dipshit doesn't see that these token gestures buys them a lot of publicity and good feelings in the community. Whereas, like, if you're just focused on your business functions, which is good, and by the way, I believe a business should just focus on their functions as well, because this free publicity of, giving stuff to charities and stuff, like I said, I think that stops people from realizing the bad that corporations do, because you know, it's stuff like this that covers that up. And yeah, but anyway, that book just highlighted what a dipshit this guy is. But I got the sense that he actually cared about, medicine and his bio company. But then, like, I researched this guy, not from his own words in his book, but just independent sources, and like, apparently that company went bust, and he took a lot of money out and then like ran away, and then the company went bust a few like months later. So he he's also a scammer, but nevertheless. So he's saying, sorry, that was just background on him. But anyway, the things he's been saying is, the first thing I heard him say, like on the campaign trail, was he wants a a test, right? That if you want to vote in the election, everybody has to pass this test. And on its face, you may think, oh, well, that's pretty reasonable. You have to demonstrate that you have an understanding of issues before you can vote. But that's the pathway to, it's not even the pathway, that is voter suppression, right? It doesn't matter if the person is uneducated. It doesn't matter if they are the stupidest person in the world. They have a right to vote. That's just a human right, right? um, I've only heard about Brazil, but I assume other countries do this. They force you to vote. Like you're not allowed to not vote. And if you don't vote, they will give you a fine, for not voting. So that's how it should be. Everybody should vote, uh, because everybody's voice matters, not just if you're smart and can pass a test, right? It's And if it were in reverse, I would never ever put in a test, right? Even if it benefited my, uh, well, I don't have a party that represents me, but, you know, if this test was beneficial towards my leanings, it would still be incredibly wrong, right? It doesn't matter who's being suppressed. Voter suppression is wrong just across the board. Because, like I said, it's the and he is doing it deliberately to benefit right wingers, right? It's Yeah, they actually have a lot of techniques to do this, right? So in the not in the national elections, but in their uh, like for the House representatives and stuff, they can. It's called gerrymandering. That's where the term gerrymandering, came from. So every 10 years, the whoever is in charge of the Senate redraws the map, which means like it's called redistricting because people, you know, things get built, people move, so they have to like change with the times. And they, so what they can do is if they realize that, like, in one row of houses we have five Democrats and one Republican. In the next row of houses we have five Democrats and one Republican. If they took it as, and then that just carries on for like 5 rows, right? If they took each row and counted the votes, the Republican would lose every time, right? But instead, they redistricted in such a way that the five Republican houses become one block. So they've managed to get one like voting block when theoretically they shouldn't at all because the majority of houses are all Democrats. But you know that's the reason right wing parties do this, right? The the higher the vote, the higher the number of voters, the higher the likeliness that a left wing party will be chosen. Which again, just because things worked out better for me, that's not why I'm saying this. Everybody has like I said, it's a human right. Everybody has the human right to vote. It doesn't matter whether you think they're dumb, whether you think this person has no understanding of the issues, they have a right to vote. That's just it. Right. The second thing I've heard him say is he has a very aggressive deportation. Sorry, what's it called? Like a policy against immigrants, right? He wants to, like, if like a couple comes over and they have a baby in America, generally that baby, well, not generally, it is that baby becomes an American citizen. What he's saying is that baby is not an American citizen. It's a citizen of whatever country the parents came from, and that child would be treated as a citizen of a foreign country instead of an American, which is bonkers. It's so they're gonna have to be classified as a citizen of a country they've never been to. It's very deranged. But what happens is they're not allowed to vote, right? Because you're a person from another country. So again, voter suppression. All his ideas are just let's suppress the votes, which should tell you something. But again, this is most right wingers who have these beliefs. So why am I singling out this guy? Because, like I said, identity politics. right? Um, a few years ago, Rishi Sunak he became the prime minister of England. Was it years ago? It was last year, I think. Fuck, I can't remember, right? But whenever he became prime minister, like my auntie, uh, actually my co-host's mother, she was like very proud, and she was like, "Oh my God, an Indian man is the prime minister of the UK. That's a big thing." And then like I scolded her. I was like, "No, this guy's a fucking right wing bigot. Fuck him." Well, I didn't say in those words, but that's the idea that I was putting towards her, right? That this guy does nothing for poor Indian people, right? He's on the side of capital, right? And that's what this whole thing is about. Just because somebody shares a skin color with you does not mean they have the same values as you. You know, uh, you could argue that, you know, because groups live together, like, well, I'm just really thinking of South Africa because we had apartheid, so like Indians were in one like group, black people were like in one group, colored people in a group, white people in a group. So there would be more shared values because all of these people lived like closer together, right? So it's very likely that the people in your community have the same shared values, but that's not a rule across the board, right? Uh, So I view Vivek in a similar way that I view Rishi Sunak. Not only are they not good representations, they are bad representations. You know, um, Kamala Harris, she's half black, she's half Indian, right? But before she became president, she was a lawyer who was a prosecutor. She went after poor black people instead of charging corporations that are fucking over their workers. She went after poor people, and then like when they're on the campaign, she was saying like, "Hey, I'll do a lot of things for black people," or whatever. And it's like your entire career has shown that that's not the case. That you are a piece of shit. But yes, so again, I just need to stress how much identity politics disgusts me. You can't be serious in politics if you believe in identity politics, which is, what liberals do. And the thing is, if you're not a dipshit, you can see the obvious counter to what you're doing. So, do you know who Ben Shapiro? Well, I guess he's one, right? Essentially, right wingers have found people of a certain identity that just espouses right wing beliefs. So, for example, Ben Shapiro is Jewish. Candace Owens is a black woman. Dave Rubin is a gay man. Um, I'm trying to think of other people, but essentially they champion people of a certain identity. And like the Democrats in America were like, listen, we need to listen to black women. And then Candace Owen comes along and says, hey, I'm a black woman. But she has a bunch of, racist right wing beliefs. So a person's skin color does not mean that they have good politics. So you will never ever see me endorsing or supporting identity politics. So, yeah, I'm trying to think if there's anything else I forgot in terms of this Vivek guy, but yeah, it's very disheartening. I wish there were more visible socialist and left-leaning, no, not let me not say left-leaning, explicitly leftist Indian people in the media. That would be a good representation. I'm not saying good as in that represents all Indians. I'm saying that would be a good role model that if you do believe in identity politics, for you to latch onto, But at least in this country, I'm not sure, like worldwide, a lot of Indian people are just right wingers. Like, during apartheid, Indian people tried to like cozy up to white people, but it's more like they try to cozy up to capital, right? It just so happens that in our racially segregated country at the time, that the capital was with the white people, so they are like, trying to be right wingers, and it's quite disgusting, right? I've so I've argued and complained for many years since I've become aware of it, but my parents are the worst of the worst of the worst. And again, you could be like, how could you say this? Well, I've told them this to their face, right? So, earlier, like I mentioned, police are bad for the world. Both my parents are police officers, right? Which, and every time I've explained to them why police don't make a difference in the world, they're like, oh, well, this is the job that paid for you to go to school or whatever. It's like you can get any job to pay for school. You don't have to be a police officer. But anyway, the next thing is they are landlords. They bought like the small apartment um, that they rent out. So they're both cops and landlords. It's disgusting. It shows a lack of moral fiber. It's again, I've mentioned landlords a lot. They are exploiting a person's need, because everybody needs somewhere to live, right? And they jack up the prices so that, like, I read this thing the other day. There's a subreddit called Ask South Africa, and this guy said my landlord increased the rent by 3,000 rand, and the comments were like, well, he's allowed to do it, or comments like that supporting this piece of shit. He's like, he can get more money, so he should be allowed to raise the rent. And it's like, no, fuck you. If you made improvements to the house, say you built a braai, then you could be like, all right, you've built a thing here on the property, the value of the property's gone up, I will pay more rent. But you've done nothing. Uh, you've just raised the rent because you can, you know. And again, I just find that disgusting. In Germany, you're like, you're allowed to make money from the first two houses that you have a house that you live in. Then you have, like, if you have more than two houses that you own but you rent out, from the third house onwards, every single cent of that goes to the government. You cannot profit in any way after the third one, right? I'm sorry, after the second one. So that's still not good for me because you're allowed to have two houses to landlord, but it's a much better solution than what we have now. you know you see a lot of like wealth investment guides that are like, yeah, you should invest in property. It's a sure thing. Yeah, it's a sure thing because people need housing, and you're taking advantage of what should be a human right. you know um, yeah. And you're like, okay, how's it gonna work without landlords? you know so the landlord didn't build the house, right? The government can just hire building communities building and construction companies to build houses. They, you know at a very very low rate, they rent it out to poor people, and that's how we partly solve the housing crisis. Also, added to this, the programs I spoke about like rehabilitating homeless people, getting them like if they have some sort of you know mental illness, like help them get that under control and reintegrate them into society, right? There's a lot of like programs that go hand in hand to make the world a better place. Yeah. But anyway, let's just see what the time is. 34 minutes. I was hoping to get to 1 hour, but that was the first topic, so I'm just talk a lot of bullshit. But Yeah, the next thing I wanted to talk about is Liverpool. And I kind of underestimated us. The thing is, I was very, uh, not disappointed, just underwhelmed by the signing of Endo. And I know, well, I don't know if you listen to this podcast for like sporting takes, so I don't know, maybe I should keep this short, right? Endo is like a journeyman. He's 29 years old. He's not a flashy signing. I was hoping for a younger, like more mobile defensive midfielder. Endo is 29 and he's apparently like a workhorse. Endo would be an excellent like capper to a very like good window. The fact that he's been brought in as our first choice six, and apparently he didn't even play six at Stuttgart. He played eight, but he just has good offensive instincts. So you know, I'm not. I wasn't. I'm still not like happy with that, but it's a workable solution, right? What I was more worried about is our defense, right? Matip and Gomez. Well, I believe Gomez can do a job at right back, even though Pedro Neto killed him this weekend. But um, I believe Gomez can do a good job at as the replacement right back. But we need more centre backs because Konate, even I believe Konate is our best defender, right? But he's very injury prone. He's always, getting some muscular injury or whatever. Um, Van Dyke, I believe, is declining. Ever since his like big knee injury that Pickford did, he hasn't been the same. So yeah, and then Matchup is just he's been finished for the past like 2 3 years. It's over. So yes, we are in desperate need of a centre back, but and we didn't address that. So you know, I was a bit worried, but we have a youth player. His name is Jarrell Kwanzaa, who's done much better than I anticipated. So I'm glad that we have a plan that it's not just trying to play matchup and Gomez. So I'd like to see how Kwanzaa develops. If he's good enough. I've only seen him in like 2 3 matches, which is not a big enough sample size to get a good impression. But based on what I've seen, he seems good. So I'm just gonna back him. Uh, I love when academy players break into the team. Trent is obviously the big one, but Curtis Jones, right? Curtis Jones had this problem where he would hold on to the ball for far too long, where like someone would be making the run, but then he's held on the ball for so long that person's offside, and he's killed like the momentum of our attack. And I was very frustrated with him, and I just didn't like every time he came on. I'm like, what's this guy doing here? But so he had some sort of injury, and when he came back, he just put his head down, worked a lot harder, and now he's in the team. Well, he was in the team at the back end of last season, and he's had a few appearances this season. But that's precisely what you want, isn't it? Like, this guy wasn't good enough. He realized the deficiencies in his game. He worked hard on it, and now he came back. My friend also supports Liverpool, and he's like, that's a bad thing. We're not going to sign a new midfielder if Curtis Jones is good. Well, well, we don't need to sign a new midfielder if Curtis Jones is good. We can just play Curtis Jones, you know. And yeah, Kwanzaa will be the third youth that's coming through from our academy. So good to see. Like I said, we don't know how it's going to end up, but the initial signs look promising. The next thing is the Hassan Minaj. Do you know who that is? Well, I guess this episode is just turning into me attacking Indian people, and I didn't plan, I didn't intend for this to happen, but this is just how it's worked out, right? Um, so Hassan Minaj was a correspondent on the Daily Show, um, and he is actually the front runner to take over from Trevor Noah. I think they haven't been on the air because of their writer's strike, but when they come back, Trevor Noah is not there anymore. So, well, I don't watch the Daily Show, so I don't know. But anyway, he the story came out this week in the New Yorker. Um, he he's lying in his okay. So he's a comedian, and in his act, he lied about a story. And generally, I don't have a problem with this. A comedian's job is to make people laugh. We're not going there for like an autobiographical tale. Like a comedian will say like, oh, somebody was saying to me the other day, to set up a joke when definitely nobody told this, but the comedian about it, right? They just found out about something and they had to frame it in the thing. But anyway, Hassan Minaj, he he's like known for incorporating his life into the comedy. So like he'll tell a story from his youth or something, and like connect it to something that happened in the current day, and there'd be a joke there somehow, right? But this reporter found out that the things he's been talking about are lies, and these are lies that are portrayed to make him look better. Like for example, there's like um, he said that he opened an envelope and there was a bunch of white powder on it, and some of that white powder landed on his child's face or his child's body, and he had to rush his child to the hospital. But thankfully it wasn't anthrax and it wasn't you know something bad, right? And his whole thing about it is that you know, I'm a left winger and I've pissed off the right wing, and the right wing are attacking me. And that story is not true, right? Apparently, like, there was some situation where, like, white powder fell out of something, and he thought, like, and that turned into the story that I just told. So, you know, it's kind of fucked up that you're telling the story about your child going to the hospital when none of that happened. It's like you're trying to elicit sympathy for something that didn't happen, which I think that's kind of gross. But like I said, most of the time I'm fine with comedians lying to make a joke. Like there's a Dave Chappelle skit where he was like in a limo in the hood at the middle of the night, and he said he saw a baby selling crack, which it's obviously not true, right? But it's it's said in such a way that you realize it's a joke. This guy is telling stories that he claims to be true, and if this reporter didn't like follow up on it, nobody would know that it was bullshit. So yeah, very. I think it's gross. And this guy Hassan Minaj, he's always talking about Indian representation as well. So I'm tying it back into identity politics. Um, so yeah, that's the third story. The fourth is Oppenheimer hit 900 million this week, which I've mentioned it many times on the pod, but I don't think you understand how fucking mad that is, right? It's it's made more than every superhero movie this year, which it's pretty mad, right? It's a 3-hour biopic about a scientist, right? It's not like a brand like Marvel, DC. This movie made more money than Batman vs Superman. Think about that. Batman and Superman are essentially a license to print money. You know, two of the most popular characters in not just comics but like in pop culture in general. And that movie made like I think 850, and Oppenheimer made 900. That's how that's how crazy this is, right? But I think this also, well, we spoke about it in the, I don't know what episode, maybe the Mission Impossible episode, where I was like, all right, Mission Impossible, Barbie, Oppenheimer, they representing three different things. Mission Impossible is star power. Tom Cruise is the star. The director McHugh, he's not very well known. Uh, then Barbie represents uh, like intellectual property that hasn't been overused in the same way. Like how many Batman movies have we had in the last 20 years? You know, and like Batman adjacent stuff. So like Joker, Harley Quinn, and the Birds of Prey. Uh, you know, Batman is just overused. You can just wait like a year and there'll be a new Batman movie. It's just you can't get away from it. But this is the first live action Barbie movie. So underused intellectual property paired with an exciting new director in Greta Gerwig. That's the that's what Barbie represented. And then the third thing, which is Oppenheimer, is represents a well-known director, and the director has the scope and leverage to make whatever project they want, and you know, I just feel the third option is much better. It's we this is how we got a boom of great movies in the 70s. I've spoken about the various eras of Hollywood, right? That like in the 1930s, it was more like, sorry, like from the 1930s to like the 1970s, it was more like star driven, or either it would be star driven or like the the studio. Like you'd be like, oh, this is a Warner Brothers picture, or this is a whatever, right? You would go there to the movies for the actor. You wouldn't like know about the director until like Alfred Hitchcock was probably the most like famous director, but that's because he did like public appearances and he was like very witty, you know. But yes, and then in the 70s, you see a lot more power go to the director, and that's how Star Wars was made. That's how The Godfather was made. That's how I could go on and on, but I think the power should lie with the director instead of, you know, with Barbie and with Barbie and Mission Impossible. Um, so yes, and I'm glad that to see that this model is paying dividends. You know, um, so it cost 100 million, and usually double that for marketing. So costing 200 and making 900, really decent, a decent chunk of change. Um, and like I said, it's not based on an IP. It's just, yeah, I can't believe how well this has turned out for, you know, the movie going public in at large, I believe. Um, that's kind of all the thoughts I had. But I was gonna say I don't want to cover uh, horror movies because the big movie that's out this week in South Africa is Talk to Me, which has been out in America and other places for quite a while now. I think it came out in maybe June, but yeah, it's only come out in South Africa this week. So uh, I wanted to speak about it this week before my cousin got pulled away, but also Spooktober is happening next month, so shouldn't we keep all the horror movies in Spooktober and then, you know, just do regular movies until then? But unfortunately, there's not a lot of good movies until then. The other one that I'm very, very excited for comes out in a couple of days. It's called Past Lives, which, again, another one, I think this came out in like February in America, but it hasn't come out here yet, and I've been waiting for this for quite a while. I've only heard very, very good things from people I respect about this. It's like a love story, which, you know, well, people don't really watch these types of movies anymore, like a dramatic love story. The But, and I think it's an A24 movie, which, carries the air of prestige, obviously, because, like I've mentioned, we mentioned it many times, but probably the best, is it a studio? Whatever they are, the best movie related entity. Um, the other thing I wanted to watch is A Haunting in Venice. I'm a big fan of detective movies in general. Like, mm, mm, I think I like sci-fi more, but detectives are very high on my list of things that I enjoy. That So I use a service called Trakt.tv, Trakt.tv, which it tracks the movies and TV shows that I've watched. The majority of people who watch film use Letterboxd. Unfortunately, Letterboxd doesn't have TV shows, so that's why I use Tracked, because you know it has everything, right? So I made a list, well, two lists. The first list is politics, which it's a bunch of movies and TV shows which contain politics, although I call it politics. And then I made another list, which is like a spin-off called Detectrix, which is detective movies that I really enjoyed. So I'm just gonna run through, let's see, the first like 20. Yeah, those only. Well, I'm just gonna go through it quickly, right? So the first one is Vertigo, which one of my favorite movies, right? So Alfred Hitchcock has a bunch of things that pop up in his filmography. So the first thing is like the icy blonde, right? Kim Novak plays the blonde in this movie, but I really think Vertigo would be the undisputed number one movie of all time if that character was played by Grace Kelly. So, if you don't know, Grace Kelly was probably the hottest woman in the world, and she made three movies with that Alfred Hitchcock. The first one being Rear Window, the other one being Dial M for Murder, and I can't remember the third one. Oh, it's To Catch a Thief, I'm pretty sure. But nevertheless, she quits her acting job and gets married to some European prince, and that's why Kim Novak got the part for Vertigo, which I would say is unfortunate. But a lot of people love Kim Novak in that movie. I just I just don't. Right. It also, like I said, there's a few things. So the first one is the icy blonde. The second one is voyeurism. Right. He loves to make a movie about somebody viewing somebody else doing something. So in this movie, he's a detective and he's watching this woman, you know, go through her life, which I actually want to speak about the second movie as well. It's called Rear Window, which has both the hallmarks that I've mentioned so far of the icy blonde and the voyeurism. So Rear Window is about this guy. He injured his leg, so he is like looking at the people in the near apartment building and like kind of spying on them. So once again, voyeurism. He's watching people while they, go about their day, and he's like, every house is like a different storyline, and in one of the houses, somebody gets murdered. So this is actually one of my biggest fears. Well, look, Alfred Hitchcock made a bunch of horror movies, but the scariest movie to me is Rear Window, which I don't know if I mentioned this before, but I never used to like horror movies. like when I was a kid, and up until like maybe when I was 23. Like, this is my reasoning was I get scared and I don't like being scared. So why would I watch a horror movie to make me feel scared? That I just don't like it. But then, like, like as I got older, like I said, it just, you realize, like, this is all bullshit, man. The real scary thing is like the repo rate going up. Like, if my car got repossessed, you know, I lose my apartment. Those are genuinely scary things. So yeah, real life is more scarier than like a guy coming to stab you or whatever. Or well, I was gonna spoil a movie. So in Hereditary, right? It's not the most disturbing thing, but there's a scene where there's like a woman who's like suspended in midair and she's like cutting her head off, and it's very fucked up. But that doesn't scare me as much as, you know, being sent to jail because I didn't fill in my taxes properly or something like that. Adult concerns just are far more worrying than some horror thing that's going on. But anyway, the reason I'm setting that up is I believe Rear Window is one of the unintentionally scariest things, right? Because you're getting spied on, and that's one of the worries I have, that like somebody's watching me and you know, they seeing what I'm doing, which I'm not really doing, much. I'm just usually like at my computer doing stuff, or like I go to the shops, do some shopping, like I tutor kids on the weekend, and that's really it. Sometimes I go out in the evenings. But yeah, you wouldn't find much by spying on me. But having my privacy invaded is very upsetting to me. That's the word, right? So, Rear Window, unintentionally scariest fucking movie, because, well, with the advent of social media and people posting all the time, and I think people have forgotten about privacy, because like my friends who are girls, they love to take like pictures and like videos, and like I don't want to be in a picture, I don't want to be in a video, and they'll just do it. I'm like, yo, what the fuck? uh I have a reasonable expectation of privacy, so society at large has just kind of forgotten about privacy. They've just like, well, anything can, be online. They don't care, which I think is a bad thing. But anyway, still going through this list. So those are the first two movies. The third one is called Mother. It's a Bong Joon-ho movie, which it's I don't want to spoil it, but somebody dies and they're trying to find the killer. The suspect is this mentally challenged guy, and his mother is potentially protecting him. So we don't know what happens. But anyway, it's a very sorry. The first three movies I've mentioned here are all tens. They are, you know, I'm going through the list from top to bottom. The next thing I have is Basic Instinct, which a lot of people will disagree with me. They'll say like it's very raunchy and very it's done in poor taste. But this is Paul Verhoeven's take on Vertigo, I feel, right? It follows like a very similar premise, and so in Vertigo, the detective that's following the lady, he suffers from vertigo, which is when he's at a high height, he gets like dizzy. In Basic Instinct, I can't remember what Michael Douglas is. I think he can't sleep, like he's suffering from insomnia. But whatever, right? He has some like deficiency, and then we have Sharon Stone as the Hitchcock blonde. even though this is not a Hitchcock movie. And I really think Sharon Stone makes the movie. It's a very tension-filled movie, and yeah, I liked it so much. Like, I don't know, I just had a big smile on my face after I watched it. Uh, uh, People are going to not hate me. They're going to be very frustrated with the next sentence I'm going to say. I believe Basic Instinct is Paul Verhoeven's best movie, which, there's some people that are, their face is going red at the moment and they want to shout at somebody. But so Paul Verhoeven made Robocop, he made Starship Troopers, he made Total Recall. I think those are the three that people would put above Basic Instinct. But yeah, Basic Instinct is my favorite. Sorry if this offends. Uh, um, the next movie I have here is called Cure. Cure is again another detective movie. It's about, there's like these supernatural killings happening, and there's this guy that the detective finds who can't remember, or he's pretending not to remember what happened. And you know there's something wrong with the bodies that have been killed, and the detective is trying to get to the bottom of it. This was directed by Kiyoshi Kurosawa, who is the other Kurosawa that people refer to him as. But another very fringe opinion, I like Kiyoshi Kurosawa more than the main guy, Akira Kurosawa. So, yeah. The next one is Decision to Leave, which I've spoken on the show many times about it. It's I feel it's Park Chan-wook's take on Vertigo, which so far on this list we have Vertigo, Basic Instinct, and Decision to Leave, which are riffs on Vertigo. So you can see there's a very specific type of thing that I like. But anyway, it's, instead of an icy blonde, we have like she's a Chinese woman, and this is a Korean movie. So she's also like, I don't know, emotionally detached. She's also like that Hitchcock archetype, right? Park Chan-wook is a big fan of Alfred Hitchcock, but he said he wasn't thinking about Vertigo when he made this movie, which seems unlikely because of the so many hallmarks that are similar to Vertigo. But I'll take him at his word. Again, all 5 of these movies 10 out of 10, right? The next grouping is, the first I think I have is Memories of Murder, which is Bong Joon-ho's best movie in my opinion, right? I already mentioned Mother. I'm not going in terms of like quality. These are all 10s that I've mentioned so far, so they're not in any particular order. I feel similar to all of them. Just Memories of Murder I think is a better movie than Mother. It's it's another like it's the story of the first serial killer in Korea. It's a person who was killing like a bunch of rural people. So it also shows like the cops don't have proper training. Like they'll walk over a crime scene and they'll walk over the perpetrator's footprints and stuff like that. They contaminate the crime scene. So yeah, it's very it's a very well told movie. It's very well shot. It's just genuinely a masterpiece. And Bong Joon-ho is a very, very good director. And to say this is his best movie is very high praise, I feel. But anyway, moving on. And we have The Big Lebowski, directed by the Coen brothers, which is so if you're familiar with the like iconic image of a detective with like a cigarette in his mouth, and he's like looking at the crime scene. A few people have asked the question, what if instead of a cigarette they had a freaking marijuana cigarette, man? I'm like, hey, I'm so freaking high, man. Whoa. Right, so The Big Lebowski is somebody like pissed on this guy's rug, and he's trying to find the people who who did it. And again, I don't want to spoil anything, but it's a very like it's comedic, but it's also a very well told detective story. Um, I saw this interview where the Coen brothers were speaking about The Big Lebowski, and they were like, "Well, we were basing it on the novels of Raymond Chandler, who's a if you don't read detective books, he's like a titan in the detective genre. There's a lot of people who draw from him, and a lot of his movies were made in sorry, a lot of his books were made into movies. So yeah. The next thing I have is Chinatown, which um, I'm looking at it. There's an argument to be made that it's the best detective movie ever made, and it's I like it so much. This is the last 10 on my list, right? So 3, 6. I have 9 movies that are 10 out of 10, and Chinatown is the last one. It's it's genuinely so dark, right? All these movies are dark because it's obviously like there's a murder or there's something, and they have to like investigate that murder. Well, Chinatown is the bleakest and like I don't want to. It like it shows the the dark side of humanity. Like, what do you think is the most fucked up thing that can happen? And this movie shows it to you. So yeah, very very good movie. And the ending that people speak about, it's a masterpiece of an ending, the final line. But obviously the movie preceding that is pretty great as well. Anyway, I don't know if I should go through all of these. We had an hour and 6 minutes, so I'm just gonna pick a few, right? The next one I have is Seven, which I watched well, not a long time ago, like 2 years ago, and you're kind of lucky. I rewatched it last night, and I'm actually gonna bump it up to a 10 because wow, I forgot what a great, unbelievable movie this is. I currently have it as a 9 out of 10, but um, every week on the show, I've been speaking about Blank Check, which is another podcast I listen to, and they are currently going through the films of David Fincher, which I think it's unfortunate because I listen to that podcast to be exposed to movies I've never seen before. So like, uh, I hadn't seen Ed Wood from Tim Burton's filmography, which I loved. Um, thinking what else? I hadn't seen any of Elaine May's movies. I hadn't seen any of Jane Campion, uh, Buster Keaton. Like they've introduced me to a lot of Catherine Bigelow. Yeah, and Avatar. The reason I mentioned this in the Avatar episode, but I didn't watch Avatar when it came out. The reason I watched Avatar is because they did a mini series on James Cameron, and yeah. So, unfortunately, I've gone through Finch's filmography before this, so it's not introducing anything new to me. So, uh, I'm still gonna enjoy the podcast, but it's just not as I wouldn't. It's. I'm just trying to say I've seen the movies before. Anyway, the next one is Under the Silver Lake, which is kind of a very very underrated movie. One of my favorite movies of the last couple of years. It's similar to The Big Lebowski, right? It's what if instead of a cigarette, this guy was smoking weed, man? Ooh, it's freaking 420, man. And it's this guy who's looking for patterns all around him, right? So I don't know if I should spoil this, but essentially, okay, so there's a lot of guys like this, and to a very very big extent, so it's a lot like me, right? I feel like there's patterns in the world. Like, there's a lot of things that are coincidences, but there's a lot of other things that you may not realize they're connected, but they are connected. So this guy is a very similar person. He's very paranoid. He's very, he thinks that there's some sort of conspiracy going on. And he starts finding evidence about that conspiracy. And it's like, what if a conspiracy theorist had their biggest wish that everything they, they thought was real, that they were told were fake, they thought it was real, it was actually real. Uh, and essentially, the movie is about the fact that he's so wrapped up in these conspiracies, his life is ruined. Like, the final shot of the movie is him being evicted from his apartment, and he's like, he goes next door to his like neighbor's house to like sleep on her bed because he doesn't have a house anymore. So I think it's kind of a warning. Don't get so invested in conspiracies and stuff that you don't look after yourself. But on another layer, they did add in a lot of like codes, conspiracies that, like, if you are that type of person that loves conspiracies, it like appeals to you. So yeah, I really loved Under the Silver Lake. Um, the next one I have here is Zodiac, another David Fincher movie, and I'm trying to think. I think, well, I'm gonna rewatch in a few weeks, but I think it's my favorite David Fincher movie. It's it's obviously about the Zodiac killer and the investigation into finding him. So there's not really much to say about it, but an expertly told tale. Um, I'm trying to think. So it's not Alien 3. That is his best movie. Definitely not The Game, even though I feel The Game is a very criminally underrated movie. Then he makes Panic Room, which also not the best movie. Benjamin Button, definitely not. Then not Gone Girl, not the girl with the dragon tattoo, and then he makes Mank. So yeah, it's between Seven and Zodiac for his best movie in my opinion. But like I said, I'll rewatch in a few weeks and reevaluate. But Zodiac is a fantastic movie. If you've never watched it, watch it. Well, I'm recommending all of these because all of these are 9s and 10s. So, you know. Um, okay, I'll do two more. The next one I have here is The Kid Detective, which is, if you are familiar with Encyclopedia Brown, who's like a boy detective, but just, like Hardy Boys, Nancy Drew, just kid detectives in general, right? So this guy, he was a kid detective, as the title implies, and there was one case he could never solve, and that kind of ruined his reputation. And he finds new evidence that kind of opens that case back up, and very similar to Chinatown, it's an extremely dark movie. But yes, I like I like investigations like that. So the last movie I want to mention is, let me see now. Well, all of these I don't really want to talk about too much. I guess, yeah, Inherent Vice, which is the third in the, what if instead of a cigarette it's a marijuana, like you're getting freaking high, man. Well, yes, and in this movie it's Joaquin Phoenix playing he's a guy named Doc Sportello, who's just like constantly high. Which it's very similar to The Big Lebowski and Under the Silver Lake, where this guy, he's a real odd fellow, and yeah, I like it a lot. So maybe check it out, Inherent Vice. Even though I have this as a 7 out of 10, I had to scroll down a bit because I don't like. yeah, I don't really have much to say about these other detective movies that I scroll past. But yeah, so yeah, I think that should probably do it. We have 1 hour and 14 minutes, which I think that's a decent amount, you know. Oh, what you're saying, I should do a 3 hour episode. Well, I could. I talk a lot of bullshit, you know. Like I said, I didn't write any of this down. This is just me vamping off the top of my head. So hopefully this was a, serviceable episode until my cousin comes back. Um, yeah, I don't have. Also, like in the doc that I have the ending thing that's like, hey, listen to, rate, review, subscribe. But yeah, I don't have a doc this week again. So um, yeah, please remember to rate, review, subscribe, give a like, tell a friend. You can find all our stuff at paicip.com, paicip.com. Also wanted to mention, I've added I've mentioned this before, but if you've never heard it, I added the Fantasy Premier League. I've created a league for the podcast. So, there's a link on paicip.com that you can just click and you'll be automatically added to our league. So, if you're interested in that, come see if you can beat me. I'm feeling good about the first couple of weeks. And yeah, so I think we're done here. And